up that you have.
Got a little lag. Anyway, all right. Well,
we're live. That's it.
Yeah.
So, well, how are you, Justin?
Yeah, you just want to dive right into it?
Yeah, man.
I feel like you probably have a little bit more going on than me recently.
Listen, not everything's about me. Isaac tells me every day. All right.
But you know what? Like, let's make today about you. At least you have it's a big deal coming up, right? Well, we got cheers to.
Of course, yeah. So this is the formula right here. Me, you. This is double oaked tonight. Mm-hmm. I think we should do a thing where we bring a different type of bourbon in the picture.
So, and I was just telling you on the way down here, I was thinking, I'm driving down here. Is this good?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was on my way down here, and I was thinking to myself, man, we haven't had bourbon to do this together. And I said, I'm going to bring this up to Jacob. I actually put it in my notes on my phone. And then I got here, and you already had it.
Dude, you know, guys, what you're about to hear, don't take this wrong way, but when I look at Justin deep in the eyes and I say, my dick, your dick, we mean it.
You just know what that means.
But no, man, life's great. I'm glad you're here. It's good to be here. You know, the podcast so far has gotten really great, great feedback. So people are watching, on my personal Facebook, I suppose. Can we have a sidebar of Supplement Snoop bourbon reviews and samples? Yeah. You know, that's something we could probably just incorporate into this.
Oh, what was the question?
Somebody said, can we have a sidebar of Supplement Snoop?
Yeah.
Bourbon reviews. And
cool. Yeah. See, and you know what's kind of funny? This is hilarious. So I have the same exact conversations with people with bourbon than I do with like pre-workouts. Like, I had somebody say to me yesterday, they were like, can you recommend me a good bourbon? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what have you drank before? Like, what is this person that, what is your kind of taste? It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. I'm like, there's like a million good bourbon. And I only started drinking bourbon like over like the last year. But you realize, because that would be what I would say. I would go to someone that knew and I'd be like, just point me into that one. And it's like,
just do what the rest of the supplement industry does, man, and create a sister brand. You know, you got Supplement Snoop, and then you've got bourbon,
like
Barbell,
bourbon.
Oh, well, that's a different initiative that we're.
I was gonna say we could have one thing that we recommend every time once we delve into that space.
That's right, and that's not going to take much. That's just it's going to take some time, and that's that's a time investment I haven't devoted to, but I guess we can tell people about that down the road.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Because I think that's kind of like one thing that's unique about like when you get into a certain like entrepreneurial sort of mode and you meet other people, there's people that are like, okay, this is cool, kind of thing. And we're like, well, why don't we just do that? Mm-hmm. Why don't we just make our own? Because I think you're like under this impression when you're outside the space that the people that are starting their own businesses and stuff, they have it all together. They have some kind of hand-me-down, some kind of like springboard. No, it's usually people that are just like, fuck it, let's do it. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, we can do that.
Yeah.
So, come on out.
Exactly. I mean, that's
catch up. Good Lord.
Oh, dude, I also, that one had a lot more in it, by the way. I didn't realize because I grabbed a handful of ice at home and just put them in each cup and then drove them here and put them in the freezer. Yours had less ice, but I still filled it up. So
what's the best deodorant?
Yeah, people are asking what's the best deodorant.
So there was one thing I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
Let's talk about something serious that we can actually apply to like other people too. So this whole last few weeks has been pretty crazy for you. And this is the kind of thing where we talk about how does your life fit into your fitness and your health and things like that, because things always change. Mm-hmm. So what's been your like training and stuff schedule lately as you're
intense, the beautiful thing about what we're like what we do is that working out is kind of a part of the job, right? You got to be fit.
True.
You got to be. So, every time I drive to Greenville in the mornings, I'll get up and I've always woken up at like 4:30 or 5 a.m. Typically, that is kind of like my thing. You know that.
Yeah.
He'll go to bed at like 2 a.m. and then get a text at 3:30 a.m. from me.
Sometimes I'm going to bed.
It's like we have a transitionary period. But no, like, so really a part of it has been, going to these different gyms and networking and talking to people and just getting to know people. So I've made the training work. Now I will say, as far as from a split perspective, I used to do like a push-pull legs or even an upper lower, because I love the frequency. I love high frequency training.
Me too.
However, my time restrictions now, I can only be in the gym for maybe an hour and 15 minutes typically. So I'm doing one body part a day again, which, hey, that's fine. Like I go in, I get what I need done, and I also network at the same time. Good.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I always end up telling people is people will say, what's the best workout? They want to know what's your workout. They want to know their favorite bodybuilder. What's their workout? It's like, well, it kind of depends, right? It's like adding those different tools to your toolbox, whether it's a full body type workout, whether it's one, you can apply once you sort of get in there and get to know those, you can like reach and grab one of those routines, grab one of those tools whenever your schedule dictates when you have to do that. So now you kind of switch it up just to sort of fit in with the rest of your life. And I know people get obsessed before they start the journey. They're like, what's that one that'll get me to the destination faster? It's like, well, same thing.
You have to, like there's no one. Yeah, we can speak about optimality all day long, like being optimal. The optimal doesn't exist. That's the biggest fallacy in training, for one, like bodybuilding. What's the optimal routine? What's the optimal amount of protein to consume? The optimal caloric intake, right? Everything's variable, right? And it's not just based on your body. It's based on your lifestyle, right? Like, how much stress are you under? How many hours do you have to devote to this? What's your training age? What's your experience? Because I've spoken with a lot of highly educated individuals, like in regards to like training and stuff, like the programming side of things. Yeah. And when I tell them that I do one body part per day, that's deemed as bro, right? Like that's the bro split.
Right.
Oh, that's kind of outdated, blah, blah. Well, it actually isn't.
How's that outdated?
Because, well, you get to
for a long time.
You get to a certain point where, because how progress is made. It's volume, progressive overload over time. Well, at a certain point, it's going to take 4 hours to get enough volume. Right. If you're doing full body. Right.
Yes.
It's one of those things. There's no such thing as being optimal, but there's, optimal for you. Jacob lifts weights. No, I don't. I don't know who that is.
Just get out of his way.
When are we dropping that OnlyFans King? I don't know who's saying these things, but actually I do have an OnlyFans. It's just go find it.
So one thing that speaking of adding, we always talk about what's right for you in a certain moment, whether it's training, but also supplements at the same time. I'll talk about the conversation you just had so these young kids came in and they were like, oh, I heard ashwagandha raises your testosterone. Yeah. And I watched you talk them out of buying ashwagandha because you're like, yes, ashwagandha can help with someone who's struggling maybe with stress. Like there's a correlation with stress and testosterone levels. So when you get to a certain point in life where stuff is pretty crazy, maybe you're not sleeping, because sometimes I tell people maybe the best test booster is a sleep aid because you're actually getting some rest. You're
no doubt.
Right. I mean, so you talk those kids out of buying a test booster when so they were ready to buy one.
Yeah, they were looking. They were looking. One. You and I were having a conversation, and I look over and they're like picking up, Alpha 365, and then the ashwagandha, but yeah, man. I mean, why lie to people? But speaking on the sleep aid thing, you know how many people that come in that just they need something for that? Literally, their words: "I need something for energy."
Right.
It's like, all right. Don't we? Well, there's a difference between actual physiological energy and like how you feel every day and a stimulant. So most people would just sell you a stimulant. I would rather recommend something like Tranquility or Superhuman Sleep. Because odds are they're not getting quality sleep and they're not recovered. Yeah.
I've told people, like, when they say, like, what's the best muscle builder? I'm like, well, it could be a sleep aid. because maybe you're just not optimally recovering properly. And then you have the people they want that answer, but sometimes you just have to kind of think outside the box a little bit. It's like, well, if we know that the way to build muscle is, you're consuming enough calories, but you're also the progressive overload part of it. It's like, well, what's stopping you from that progressive overload? And a lot of times it's because they don't have the energy. So they're looking for stimulants. Now, the stimulants are cool in ways, but then a lot of stimulants also crush your appetite. So the food energy never happens because you're not eating enough. That's what happened to me. And that's why I always take this conversation very personally is I got into a mode where, just working constantly and the stress and cortisol. So relying on stimulants rather than food. And then I got into this body dysmorphia kind of thing where you're like, you didn't want to eat more because you didn't want to gain weight.
Right.
And it was like this total mind fuck of a cycle. And now I kind of got rid of that because you start to learn that, okay, use your food. And then how can I fit in my supplements, my stimulants, just sort of add into that where you're not too far on one side or the other. I see it all the time, but now I get people saying the same that same question, and I watch them. And I was like, "You're doing the same thing that I did wrong, years ago." So,
yep. So we have a question from Miss Debbie Garrick. She actually came by to visit today. So,
awesome.
Little side note about Debbie. I was her trainer while I was in college. I worked for LA Fitness, and she was a client of mine there for a long time. She was amazing.
Nice.
And then she's also. I suppose I guess her title would be graduate and graduate relationship advisor. I don't want to be botching it. I'll just get the question. But she came by to see me with my physiology professor today from college, and it was amazing. Hydration aids.
Well, that's a great question because I think that's what we constantly see in this space is people putting the cart before the horse, right? People always want to know, and I say this almost on a day-to-day basis. Like people go, Justin, what's the best pump product? There's some pretty cool pump products, but you could take Plasm Surge, which is awesome.
Yeah, no doubt.
But if you're not properly hydrated and things like that, Plasm Surge is not going to do anything for you.
Right.
It's like you can't pump a bad sort of hydration or diet and things like that. So,
well,
it's
one
a really
thing
good question.
About
Salt.
pump. Well, on salt too.
That's what Austin said.
Yeah.
Salt. Well, people always. Sorry, I don't want to. But people are you're brought up to avoid salt if you have a healthy lifestyle and you work out. Salt is one of the main transporters in the body for everything. Is making acetylcholine for neurotransmission. So if you're robbing your body of salt, I say if you eat relatively clean, give me all the salt. Yeah. Give me all the salt around my workout and go from there. Sorry.
Just to speak on Debbie's question really quick again, as far as products that we recommend.
Astrolite.
So Astrolite by Glaxon is amazing.
Awesome.
Another thing that I recommend a lot, and I can't, he's in the feed right now. I can't really recommend it, but it's Overcome by Gymflow because it is it's not too overpowered on the EAA kind of side of things. It has a really good sources of electrolytes.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It tastes freaking amazing.
And so I love that. And then I was going to bring up something else, but.
So we'll also, so.
Is the brewery doing the TNS beer? Do they have a shipping option?
On the hydration aspect, that's another thing too, where people.
Oh, thank you.
And I think I even heard you talk about it. Maybe it was even today or when you did your question sticker the other day. People talk about, the whole conversation: are BCAAs pointless? Are they worthless? Are EAAs worthless? And you brought up the same thing I always bring up. There's a lot of companies that they know, okay, maybe intra workout is a spot anti-fatigue for BCAAs. Then that Fresh Chris, he adds in some Aquamine.
Praise him.
That Aquamine, Debbie. So there's an ingredient called Aquamine. It comes from. They basically get it from
seaweed.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. So it's what it wants to do is sort of remove toxic metals and things like that from your body. So it kind of helps with your whole entire system. So there's all kinds of really cool things when it comes to
the hydration side of things.
They add in hydration aspects to the EAAs, and that's exactly what you were talking about with Austin, what he does. So that's one thing I like about, we don't just see BCA formulas anymore. We see, okay, give us all 9, EAAs, that's a better route to go, but then also give us some extras.
Yep.
And then you see things like aqua.
Well, and that's, dude, I mean, in all reality, like a little side note, I'm going to answer this really quick and then I'm going to step back to this, so don't let me forget. The brewery, Plankona Brewery, they don't have a shipping option. To my knowledge, they might. However,
I guess you'll have to come down, Larry.
Yeah. Oh, is that Larry asking that?
It's Larry.
Okay. I was going to say, if you're a friend of TNS, just shoot me a message and I will make it a point to get you. Like, I plan on, sending Michael and those guys a 6-pack of it, just to, obviously let them try it.
Yeah.
So, if you're a friend of TNS and, I know you, just hit me up and we'll make something happen. Okay. But also, as far as TNS, we don't push EAAs or BCAs.
Right.
You know that. My stance is that
you actively push against it.
Yeah, but we carry a few of them, quite a few actually, and the reason for that is really the hydration thing. We have a lot of guys who are landscapers, construction workers, people who are on their feet all day, and so most of the EAA formulas these days are extremely jam-packed with good electrolyte sources, and so that's.
Well, and like one thing that I see you say a lot, so a lot of people that because I was in this mode too, and that's when I discovered that aminos for me were good, because what I would end up doing, you're working a shit ton of hours. What's the first thing you forget to do? Eat properly, hydrate properly, right? You're working. It's humid as hell here. It's hot. So what I noticed when I would add in EAA products into my workout, I was able to work out longer. But it's because, exactly like what you always say, if you're in optimal conditions, you don't need EAAs or BCAAs, most likely. But most people aren't in optimal conditions, especially if, even if you are but if you train really hard and you're not recovering properly, you're still probably because the demand goes up when you're working out. So I always end up telling people the same thing when it comes to that BCAA question, is it worthless? I was like, just get yourself in an optimal position where you're consistent, buy a tub of BCAAs or EAAs, try it during your workout, try it without, and then you'll never have to ask anybody again if they're worthless or not. Yeah. Because you'll know.
Dude, we've had quite a few people come in. I was going to see if Isaac wanted some more. We've had quite a few people come in and say, we'll ask them about their goals or what they're wanting to achieve. And literally I've asked the question, are you willing to change your lifestyle and your diet? And Isaac can definitely agree with this. They've answered, no, I'm not willing to. Yeah. Okay, well then maybe EAAs and BCAAs might benefit your life, you know, because you're sitting here not willing to change a damn thing. You don't want to include protein. Well then, okay, yeah, you probably could benefit from this.
Yeah, I'll use my own personal experiences with this when it comes to carbohydrate powders. People will say, are carbohydrate powders worthless or are they useful? And I said, well, here's my thing. I said, I sort of accidentally, I stopped eating the breads and all this kind of other stuff. So next thing you know, I wasn't bringing in many carbohydrates and I was still working out a lot. So carbohydrate powders for me were because I still struggle to go find foods all the time that are high in carbohydrates. So carbohydrate powders for me were really big because it let me sort of reintroduce carbs into that whole workout window without making a meal. But now I sort of, have slowly incorporated. So a lot of times it's what are supplements for? Whatever you're kind of struggling with, for you, it might be totally worthless. But for me, it was game changing because I was able to bring that in. It was easy on my system. And then all of a sudden I'm okay, I feel better with carbohydrates. And now I'm eating more carbohydrates. It's okay. So it sort of was push me in the right direction.
Yeah. And I will say about carbohydrates and specifically the cluster dextrin sources that we, we tend to promote and the higher quality maltodextrin and dextrose sources, there's a lot of good research on specific timing of carbohydrates. So carbohydrate timing is a really important quotient into the formula if your diet is sound, you know? So especially when dealing with high performing athletes, especially CrossFitters, we've really kind of delved into that community recently with our involvement with a lot of of the events. Man, like I sit here and I look at all these CrossFitters that are performing, nonstop for hours on end, doing multiple energy system requirements. Specific timing of carbohydrates is more important than protein. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, no,
like that, and that's
so. Not to cut you off, but one thing that so I did a podcast with Doug Miller, and Doug said to me, he goes, honestly, he's like, if I have my choice, like say what to prioritize, carbs or protein, he goes, I'm picking carbs 10 times out of 10. He goes, I want carbs after my workout. He's like, the protein will come. Yeah. He's like, I'll get it in, whatever. He goes, the carbs are what I want. He's like, that's what I prioritize in my diet over absolutely everything else.
Yeah, so what happens when you overconsume protein anyway?
Right.
It converts.
Right. And it's also like, it's kind of strenuous on the system when you're like incorporating protein. It's like carbohydrates,
Yeah, and so like when you overconsume protein following a workout, right? It's safe to say that a lot of it is going to be converted to carbs anyway. Why don't we just use carbohydrates to preserve and actually utilize protein the way it's supposed to? Yes. And then let the carbohydrates replenish our glycogen stores anyway. So there's a lot to be said about that. And I think that's where our industry has actually done a bad job at explaining and describing carbohydrates. I mean, let's be, there's not enough education out there on why carbs are important. Yeah. For specific people, obviously, if you're
especially as keto has become a huge thing too.
Yeah, don't even get me started.
Pour out a little for a keto.
Yeah, pour out all of the damn bottle. But have you ever met a person on keto who's done it for more than a year?
No.
Like in person?
No. And that's kind of the thing. Like, I didn't directly try keto. And I think that it's like the same thing with like intermittent fasting. Like for a while I would practice intermittent fasting, but only because I didn't really I would train say like mid-morning and I didn't like to eat beforehand. So I just told people I just didn't have breakfast.
Bro, well, and the thing about intermittent fasting is it's not a diet, it's a schedule.
That's what everything comes back to is what is your schedule?
I was going to say intermittent fasting is not a beautiful, it's not some miraculous thing, and you know that.
No, right.
But here is the good thing psychologically, and I am a fan of intermittent fasting if it works for your schedule, because guess what? If you're a fat ass and you need to eat 2,500 calories a day to lose weight, it's a lot easier to consume 2,500 calories in 6 hours than to spread it out across a 10-hour eating window.
I'll say this, I got in, so this is and this is me speaking from personal experience, and this is why I can always kind of fall back on this. When I got into, say, bodybuilding and things like that and working out, I was told you have to eat every 3 hours. Okay?
Me too.
Or your muscle starts falling off and all that sort of stuff, keeping your metabolism, the fire stoked and all that stuff. I was working out like crazy, but I got fat because I was eating all the time, but I was eating shit. I was 19, I'm living on my own. What the fuck can you afford to eat, at that age, you know what I mean, where you don't have no money. Right. So I'm eating garbage. So I eventually to eat constantly for me was a bad idea. But then so once I I would say most people should attempt intermittent fasting for one specific reason. It changes your relationship with food. Because you realize that it's sort of like your brain telling you you're hungry all the time. So it sort of comes into intermittent fasting teaches you to be disciplined when it comes to eating. Yep. It's because at first you're kind of oh God, I have to go this whole entire time without eating. And eventually you just go, once you tell your body okay, we're not going to eat until this time, it teaches you sort of how to have a healthier relationship with your food, which is what a lot of people struggle with to begin with. And then it's there's no miracle to that, but it just sort of helps you, I think, long term. It's just another tool.
I think, and one thing that I've run into with intermittent fasting with a lot of people, specifically females, is that it can also be a detriment. Yes. And what I mean by that is, if you think about the psychological tendencies of people who have eating disorders, we're looking at binge and purge, right? You can overconsume for a certain amount of time, and then you either restrict yourself or you expel it,
Yes.
right?
100%.
And so intermittent fasting kind of embraces that concept where you consume a shit ton for a little bit of time, and then you give it up for a while. So for some people who are already kind of pre-exposed or preconditioned for a eating disorder or a like a body dysmorphia kind of issue, IF might not be a good idea. You know, so like
100%.
but yeah, moral of that story is that intermittent fasting is a schedule. It's not really a
and
diet,
like I said, it's just another tool. And that's why I tell everyone, like, Nate, you know, people get frustrated with my answer, but I'm like, go try it.
Yeah.
Try it out.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to ask me anymore. Like, because once you sort of like understand the whole like working out concept and the eating concept, like, why not try everything? Then that way, like, I'll give you an example. So like, if you know you're about to have this crazy weekend, you know, where you're going to eat like shit or whatever, maybe I incorporate some intermittent fasting in there, because then I'll still fall in my window of macros and things like that. And you don't deviate. Yep. So it's like, well, okay, I could kind of pick and choose. And people never give enough credit to their bodies for the adaptability that your body has. People get like so obsessive over details. I'm like, do you know that your body is going to laugh? You know, basically.
Oh man, don't even get me started on that. That's you know, given our demographic location, the concept of biological evolution is you know, it's frowned upon. However, it's 100% accurate and 100% factual. You know, the entire concept of evolutionary theory is adaptability. And when people come to me and say that, you know, these minute things, like, there's a list of them, and they're not popping up, but it's like, I'm like, really? Like, do you think your body's that dumb?
Yes. Or that fragile?
Yeah. Like, we're evolved to have a genetic ability to adapt. I mean, what do you think muscle building is? Your whole body's doing it all day long. Yeah. Like, okay, well, how can we figure out how to adapt to this process? I mean, but from a basic level, what is bodybuilding? Right. It's an adaptation to stress. I say that all the time to people, like when they talk about, because stress is such a big thing. Yeah. I'm like, exercise is an adaptive. It's training your body to have an adaptive stress response, and that's really it. It's like, I'm going to. And I think that's why so many people that are into fitness are entrepreneurial too, because you realize the only way to get that, they're not trained to like deal with stressful situations because they're not exposed to it. But it's like, we're doing that at the gym every day. I can speak on that from my generation, even like being a 25-year-old guy in my space. I tend to consider myself like mentally a little bit older than I am, because I hang out with everybody. All my friends are typically a little bit older than me. But when I talk to people who are like 25 to 23 to 25, like around my age that I went to college with, and they'll tell me about a situation where like, oh, it's so stressful. And especially right now, right now in my life, dude, the past month, and you have the audacity to tell me that a potential job interview is stressful. Right. Not even one that you've been guaranteed. Right. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. And honestly, it's like, it's not even that, because we're not born with these abilities. It's just whether you expose yourself to it or not. I was just having this conversation last night with Michael. Yeah. How are you conditioned? From Glaxon. Yeah. Right. Love you, Michael. We love Michael. Right. Love you, Michael. So I said to him, and he was agreeing with me about, I was like, sometimes I get like, it's almost like concerning. Because you're like, I feel like I should probably be more stressed out about this. You're like, but it's just kind of what you do. You just expose yourself to this stress because, so it's like. You adapt to it. Right. And that's how you realize that you always come back stronger, as cliche as that is. Yeah. Just like in the gym, if you push harder in the gym, you're exposing your body to more stress. You come back, you repair, you recover. So the body, the mind, you go through the tough experience, you go through the stressful experience, and your body goes, okay, let's, sort of like build up the walls, build up the fences to deal with that next time.
And then when stuff happens, you're just kind of like, all right, cool. Like,
It's very compounding, you know, like it's a compounding adaptation, you know, like
yes.
introduced to a new stress. Oh, okay. Well, that sucks. That hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's do something different to make sure we can handle it next time. But yeah, damn it. I lost my thought again. I was gonna say something really cool. It was gonna be, but you know what?
I think that's the only thing that like separates most people is, you know, I think we all get in these situations where we all know that stress is coming, and we all know it's tough, right? But it's like, how do you deal with that stress? There's no way that, you know, we're not really like unique. I say this to Chris all the time on our happy hours. We're all basically the same. We all struggle. We all have these stresses, but it's like, so what do you do with that? Like, how do you sort of like deal with those stresses? That's actually what separates people, because we all are exposed to something at some point.
Yep. You got to stay in the stressful situations though, because it's a perishable ability. So, some wise words from our producer.
There's a really important point here at the end. If you get too comfortable, you'll get soft again. Isn't that what I would say, it almost becomes a negative. It's almost like potentially like toxic for people that are in, say, this space where you're sort of into the unknown. Is, don't you freak out when you're comfortable? Like, isn't it like, that's when I'm uncomfortable?
That's when I am the most stressed.
Yes. When you feel comfortable, it's like,
and my best friends, Isaac and Austin, can tell you straight up. They can tell you better than I can. Like, when everything is great, when our sales are incredible,
horrible,
when I don't have a whole lot going on,
terrifying.
Dude, I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
Because I feel like my purpose is meant for more than that, you know? So yeah.
Also, the first thing I struggled with when I moved from working full time and sort of being on that path into entrepreneurship, I wasn't paying attention to how much hell we went through for like a couple years, because you're just so kind of caught up in it. And then I remember like the one night I was sitting there and I was just kind of like on my phone, and I was just kind of digging around. I was watching TV and I'm going, man, I feel like I should be doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to freak out. I like almost had a panic attack because things were so chill.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, man, like, because you're so used to being in that environment where, say, your boss or something like that, or someone's going, oh, you need to be like doing, or you're not growing. And I remember like literally, dude, I like started to almost like hyperventilate, because I'm going, I have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
I have to. And I was like, oh, shit. But I had never been exposed to that before. So it's like, it can get to a toxic level of being so obsessed with growth that you don't allow yourself any kind of comfort whatsoever.
Yeah. I think I always go back to the whole podcast by Andy, one of the Andy Frisella podcasts.
I was thinking about Andy as I was saying that.
Yeah. Well, his one cast that really got me, and I've listened to it probably like 20 times now, when I'm ever feeling like, you know, because there's been a few points in the past 3 years where I feel like nobody gets it, like around me. Like I've just felt like I'm like, nobody understands what I feel. Like, and the cast was called Balance is Not Balance. And the whole premise of that podcast was, you know, a lot of people view balance as working 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, working your ass off Monday through Friday, putting the work in, and then Friday night through Sunday, you're living it up.
Yeah,
you're having you're not even thinking about your purpose, your mission, your path. And he basically dispelled that by saying, you know, my balance is I'm going to bust my ass for the next 10 to 15 to 20 years, nonstop, and then for the rest of my life, I'm going to live the way I want. And so that whole obsessiveness where you don't allow yourself any free time, you know, it helped me cope with that, because I'm not able to, like, I find it hard to do that. Yeah. Even when I go on vacation, man, like even the trip that I went on with my siblings was incredible out west.
Anxiety inducing, probably.
Well, no, I honestly, like, I trust my guys so much, like, here to run the store that I was not worried about the store.
Not worried about the store.
But I was so focused on making content. Like, it was like,
right.
I was like, I'm gonna make the best vlog. Like, I've got to always do something, you know? Like,
I guess that was my point. Not worrying about like the store, but worrying about like, are you able to stop for a second and just enjoy things?
Bro,
you know what I mean?
I paid $85 for a carry-on bag or for like a checked-in bag just so I could bring my camera equipment.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck's wrong with me?
Yeah.
But at the same time,
well, so, and I think that this is a conversation I have with other entrepreneurs and things like that is constant. Is people go, okay, you never want to fall back into like those bad habits, but at the same time, you just being aware of that all the time separates you like from other people. And that's one thing that I've sort of struggled with. And as you know, my business partner is
he's an animal.
He's a machine. He is a fucking machine. And there's times where, and this is why him and I are like such a great team together, is there's times where I'm too laid back about certain things. Like, cause I'm like, I've seen every fucked up situation possible at this, not possible, but like,
right.
I just know everything's going to be okay. So I'm kind of like, kind of whatever. So he motivates me to make sure that I want more all the time. Right. Because, but then there's like, I am a good influence on him too, because it's an obsession. And I'm like, hey dude, like I'll stop him sometimes. I'm like, hey man, like this is a really good thing. Like, and we'll have like conversations. Him and I have like a check-in like every now and then. And really honestly, like most of the time it's just, I'll tell him how much I appreciate what he does for me. And then like vice versa, like, we kind of keep each other like, because he said on a podcast one time, speaking of like what you were talking about earlier with Andy, he's like, fuck work-life balance. He's like, there's no fucking such thing as like work-life balance. He's like, because you're either all in here, you're kind of like going back and forth. So you have to rely on those other people that understand that to like, I know if I'm kind of struggling with something, there's only really like a couple people I can tell that to. You're one of them. He's one of them. It's like you need those people around you that you're not really looking for an answer necessarily. You're just looking to know that you're not alone in these types of thoughts.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think the stigma has been created in the entrepreneurship space that entrepreneurship is lonely, right? It's like, there's nobody at the top, or like, nobody understands this. And I feel that that it's not imposter syndrome. Like that comes and goes, but the feeling of like, nobody understands, nobody gets it, that's bullshit.
I totally agree.
First of all, when you are chasing your purpose and your path and your vision, you're going to level yourself up. And and if you view life as like a role-playing game, like an RPG, like you're leveling up and you're achieving new sets of individuals around you, like because they're at the same high level as you. Like, oh, okay, you're welcome to this guild. Like you're in, and so
that's
like
pretty good, right?
That
is good. That's good.
Yeah, level of understanding.
That's
so
what I'm talking about.
our producers like over here like agreeing, nodding, but like that's when people say like money doesn't equal happiness, there's plenty of people who are lonely who make a lot of money, and nobody, like, entrepreneurship's a lonely path. That's bullshit, and that's also self-affirmation that you have to tell yourself to make you want to like work harder. Like, okay, cool. If you truly are working towards one thing that makes you feel so passionate about it, you're going to level yourself up and you're going to be around people. Like, dude, honestly, when I started TNS, like I never would have thought of meeting people like you and meeting people like Chris and meeting people like Michael and, Steve from Natural Body and, Vegas Discount. Like I'm friends with a lot of retailers now that are way ahead of me. But when you level yourself up, you're allowing the key into the door that is the next guild, So,
no, that's good. That was good stuff.
Yeah.
No, like, but one other like part of that too is like because I have, but I think like it kind of changes things. Like,
sorry. When when Justin looks back at Isaac,
we've had these conversations. We've had these conversations, so I'm all about that.
Oh yeah.
But like also like exactly what you said. Some people that I talk to about these concepts, they don't own their own businesses. They're not entrepreneurs. They work in, say, the same kind of corporate maybe setting that is sort of like the traditional path, but they have that same concept where they're constantly thinking about leveling up. Maybe it's like the promotional aspect of it, and they're doing. The difference is when you're in the corporate setting, you have to do that under someone else's, parameters. When you're an entrepreneur, you can sort of make up your own parameters, but that doesn't mean like there's some people that I have that are very close to me in my life that are on the traditional path, and that's what they want. But we can talk conceptually, it's the same. You're trying to do what you have to do. Granted, the situation is a little bit different. So you can have the same type of conversations, but it's just, it's like those details, and exactly like what you're saying. Entrepreneurship, I don't think is lonely at all.
No.
But it's like most people don't understand certain things, but there's a lot of people that do understand. And like, I say this same thing all the time, whether it's entrepreneurship or whatever you sort of dealt with, like in your life, when it comes to maybe it's relationships or whatever it is, it's sort of like sometimes you're walking around like in a foreign country, right? And then you're surrounded by people that are speaking a different language than you. And then like you hear someone, it when someone DMs you or you hear a podcast, whether it's like Andy for you, most likely, right? You hear someone use certain words and certain terms and certain phrases that you go, yes, we speak the same language. And you sort of gravitate towards that person. So if anything, I would say the opposite is lonely. When you're in a situation where you're sort of surrounded by people, and I think it happens more when you're in, say, a corporate setting, a 9-to-5 kind of setting, because you're sort of forced to be around certain people. Whereas entrepreneurship, you can kind of like dictate to yourself who you surround
you create your
with,
surroundings. Yeah.
Right. But it's more like you're able to like, you hear that type of language and you see those types of like behaviors, and you just kind of gravitate towards that. And that's like what I think we look around and you like, I had this conversation with Chris, the one I said, you make labels and you make really cool stuff and you make products. Him and I have a different sort of business, but at the same time, I can talk to him about what I'm struggling with and he just gets it. Same as you.
Yeah.
You have your retail setting, you do all these things, but it's like, in my business is a little bit different, but we understand conceptually the heart of what is our stressors or what we're thinking about is still the same. And that was one thing I noticed. I hearken back to this all the time. We were talking to, it was me, you, Dan from Ghost, Ben from Morphogen, and Michael from Glaxon. Now you have Glaxon, Morphogen, and Ghost. 3 very successful brands, 3 totally different approaches, right? And they were all talking about their why. And it was kind of all the same. They're all like the same guy.
But they approach it from a different personality.
Totally different personality, but there's common ground there for everyone. That was one of the coolest things about the Christmas party that I thought was cool is there's all these different approaches when it comes to supplement space or any space. You can do things your own way, but conceptually we're all kind of the same.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to have thought leaders in our space.
Unsuccessful. Thought leaders. I tell you what, if you call yourself a thought leader, you're an asshole. Like, I will say that. Like you should probably let other people call you a thought leader. Unsuccessful entrepreneurship is lonely. For chasing your purpose. That's true too.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Let's put that one up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those, in my opinion, those who say it's lonely are not entrepreneurs.
I agree.
those who say it's lonely are those who are around entrepreneurs and have been kind of closed off because they were leveled out of that person, right? So let's say you have an entrepreneur who's chasing their purpose, who is upgrading their friendship and making connections with people who are far above their regular set of friends, right? That friend is going to see that person as being lonely because guess what? They cut them out. And that's very solipsistic to say, but on the ground level, the regular person who lives the 9-to-5 job sees that other individual as being lonely because guess what? They cut me out. And solipsism is the inability to see past your own nose.
Yeah.
I made a story about that the other week. Yeah. And it's a really cool. It's a really cool definition because I like to differentiate between narcissism and solipsism.
I watched this whole thing and I was fascinated.
Yeah, because
it was good. That should have been a podcast.
Yeah, well, in the books that I've read, and Isaac and I, we share a lot of common reading material between development and such. And that word specifically, it's very important. And so,
well, I'll say this, just to bring that point home, I would say the most lonely time of my life was when I was working that 9-to-5 setting, and not saying that's how everyone will feel. Entrepreneurship has brought me more meaningful relationships than I would have ever received in that old setting, kind of thing. But because I'm just kind of wired that way, and that doesn't make me good or bad or anything like that. But it's finding what it is that you're good at, or say what it is that figuring out who you are, how you're wired, being entrepreneurial, and then meeting other people in the entrepreneurial space has changed everything for me. I was lonely before because I was surrounded by people that I just we didn't really understand each other. So now everything has kind of changed. So I definitely agree. The entrepreneurship thing is definitely not lonely.
Well, I agree. I've made friends like you.
Right,
I've made friends like everybody else that's coming down. So we've been going on for 47 minutes. It's getting a little long.
Yeah.
But I guess we should probably sum it up. In conclusion, we have the TNS grand opening next week.
That's what I hear.
Saturday.
It's a big deal.
And I thought I created a banner for it, but I guess I didn't. Anywho,
so we have Plank Owner this weekend.
Yes, so Plank Owner's tomorrow at 6 p.m.
Yep.
We're going to be releasing the Muscle Beach IPA.
Yeah. And wait, so what's the final details about this? 100 milligrams of ashwagandha?
So they sent me 200 grams of, they called it the Trigonda. It's a 33% split between 3 different forms of ashwagandha: 5%, 2.5%, and 35%.
Sure.
Yep. And so when I did the math, it was 16.188% with analyte content.
Okay, so you put all 3 of that form,
and I divided it.
What is KSM?
5.
5. I was gonna say
5 is
max.
So Cimaril is actually, or Sensoril is actually 10%,
10,
and then Shodan is 35. So
we're halfway to Shodan.
Per beer. I don't know the milligram content. I'll have to work it out with Sean tomorrow. But at 16% and 200 grams, you're looking at over an efficacious dose per beer. And from what the brewers have been telling me, it tastes actually really good. It's a really good beer.
Good.
They told me, they're like, I'm really impressed with the earthiness, the body of it. So
well, that's what's so genius, I think, about using it in a beer is a lot of times. So IPAs, doing an IPA is a good idea because your IPAs is sort of you have that pine sort of. Boy, that poor thing. The IPAs have that sort of earthiness anyway, which you got the pine needle sort of vibe to it, and so to do an ashwagandha with that is genius. And you know me, man, I am a huge, massive fan of Shodan ashwagandha. So
did we
yes,
we destroy a half liter?
We killed a whole bottle of double oaked. Okay, so anyway, so tomorrow we'll be doing some content from Plank Owner Brewery.
That's impactful.
Yeah, I'll
that's
be
gonna
there.
be awesome.
So I have happy hour with Chris at 6, and then I'm going to go right over to second happy hour.
So I tell you what, and
That's
I
a Lord
told
of the Rings.
and I said
Second breakfast.
Second breakfast.
God, I love you. I love this guy.
dude, I'll be real with you. I'm not going to start on another tangent. We don't need to go down this, but I've never seen Lord of the Rings.
I knew he was going to say that right when he started, and we have to fix that.
Okay, so for Christmas,
when
we have all this locked down,
we have all this locked down,
we're gonna watch Lord of the Rings for Christmas.
we're going to watch
I mean,
Lord of the Rings for
I'll do it
Christmas.
right now.
Justin
wanna
will
do
do it
the
right
entire
now.
series
Has to
right
be there. Okay.
I have to be there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll watch Lord of the Rings, and also
all of them,
all of
7.
them. We'll watch all 7 of them. On our way back from Greenville tomorrow, let's jump in the happy hour. I said I was do it last Thursday, and I didn't. Did you guys go live?
I screwed that up last week. I had something that threw everything off last week. Tomorrow's happening for sure.
Chris,
Fresh Chris.
I know you're not coming to the grand opening. It's okay. I love you.
He might.
Nah, he's not. It's okay. But have you asked him?
I haven't officially asked.
Because I asked him, like, yeah. Anyway,
We asking him tomorrow.
Chris is like a part of like my soul, so like I feel bad about
Mine
him
too,
like
yeah.
saying anything on the air.
Yeah.
Let's just say this: Isaac and I are going to be riding back from Greenville to Plank Owner tomorrow, with like after a lot of meetings and a lot of cool things that are going on. We're going to join the live. We don't have to be in the live, but we're going to be commenting on the live.
FOMO is real, man.
Dude, I have FOMO bad.
Yeah.
You know?
All right.
So,
Chris.
anyway, guys, thank you guys so much for watching this. Thank you for joining the video. We've down to we've down an entire bottle of double oaked Woodford Reserve.
It's part of the formula.
That is the formula. But Justin, where can people find you?
At Supplement Snoop on Instagram and at Scale Your Sups on Instagram. Yep.
Awesome. And so for me, it's obviously you guys, it's The Nutrition Store LLC, the Formula Podcast.
The Formula Podcast.
That's a cool one. I'm trying to compile like little clips of this podcast as we go. But anyway, y'all have a great night. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we really appreciate you.